Hey, David.
Hello, how are you?
Out of breath. I just got home. I ran back from the end of the Orioles game. So,
Oh,
um,
wow.
so I will keep admitting people as they come. Hopefully, people
Okay.
remember. Nice shirt. I wore mine just the other day.
Yep.
Um, and you can tell everybody who you are in a second. Just to let you guys know the Baltimore chap should come out this weekend, hopefully. Um, and looks like our next SABR Day will be February 5th. But
Okay.
for those who are local, obviously.
Right.
Um,
Are
and
you doing in person?
yes, last
Okay.
in person we did was February of 2020.
Right.
We did not do a 22. Bob Davids did a virtual one. We did a mini virtual one, which was mostly administrative stuff.
Okay.
And then obviously we had the convention, so that was the big looking forward.
Okay.
So why don't you start? I'll mute myself and
Okay.
pick up with you in a few minutes.
Okay. Well, first, Peter, it was very much a privilege to meet you in person in Baltimore at Saber 50, and thank you for having me tonight. I am in the process of writing an article that I'd like to submit to the Baseball Research Journal about Mary Dobkin and the TV movie Aunt Mary. So I've come across a few themes that I just want to share as I'm moving forward with the research. Uh, Mary's story is very much similar to Baltimore in that it's an underdog story. Mary was from Russia. She was found in the cold when an aunt and uncle took her in, and she was later adopted by a couple named the Dobkins. Lots of surgeries, and there were amputations and a lot of physical problems that she had, but she learned to speak English through listening to Orioles radio broadcasts, in the Orioles of the minor leagues back then. And what's fascinating is she never let anything stand in her way. She was steadfast, which is very much Baltimore's story. Baltimore is sandwiched between Philadelphia and New York. It very much had a working class vibe once upon a time. It's a little more cosmopolitan now, but that never say die attitude is what got the Orioles to come to Baltimore. That never say die attitude is just so representative of the 80s and 90s when the harbor was rebuilt. When I went to college in Maryland, we would go up to the harbor almost every weekend. It was very much new. The whole refurbishing and people coming out, the bars and restaurants and so forth. So Mary's story is depicted in the TV movie Aunt Mary, starring Gene Stapleton in 1979 on CBS, Hallmark Hall of Fame. Now, what's interesting to me, because I'm a pop culture guy, as you all know, is that CBS had Gene Stapleton as a star for 8 years, from 71 through 79. She decides to leave All in the Family. They kill off her character off screen, and the show All in the Family is canceled, and Archie Bunker's places the sequel series, where it focuses more on the bar. Archie's he takes over Kelsey's with a business partner played by Barton Balsam, who is in Aunt Mary as well. So this is Stapleton's first TV job after All in the Family. So there are a lot of eyes on it. It's very different from what she portrayed on All in the Family. She's not a dingbat. She's not clueless. She's just a very positive woman, a very feisty woman. And if you listen to Gene Stapleton's interview on YouTube, Archive of American Television, she said that Mary was always interested in any publicity she could get for the kids. Mary's sole mission was to create teams and a structure for kids who couldn't afford to go to summer camp. She created this atmosphere for kids to play baseball because she wanted to share that love that she had for the game. And kids who didn't have a lot of money, parents were working class, they couldn't really give their kids the opportunities that richer kids had or suburban kids had. So they Mary is a kind of a safe space. So kids hang out in her apartment. They're called the Dobkin Dynamites. And what you see in the movie at the beginning is Martin Balsam's character saying a woman can't run a baseball team. And his grandson says, why not? And Mary says, why not? And the grandson says, Mary knows more about baseball than anybody. Why can't she manage the team? Why can't she coach us? And I really like that story. I remember seeing it when I was a kid on television, and it's a true story. So that makes it even more poignant that this actually happened. Now, when I say it's a Baltimore story, when I'm doing research, and I know you have all done research as well in these different areas for different teams, when you get past Philadelphia, Chicago, New York, and you get into the Houstons, the Baltimores, the Dallases, the San Diegos, you start to see when they got major league teams, it was really a small cadre of people who got that off the ground. And these cities, if you talk to people there, they'll describe it as a small town in a big city. I don't know that I've never heard of a story like this in any other city. There might have been, but certainly not to the degree of suffering that Mary had. I mean, you're talking really, really serious problems. What is interesting further to me is that it's not really well known. She's not really well known outside Baltimore. The TV movie isn't really well known. You talk to people about it, their eyes glaze over. They think you're talking about something you made up. And to come full circle, just personally, my first job out of law school was to work at a company called Broadway Video. Excuse me. Broadway Video owned Saturday Night Live. But at that time, in the early 90s, it also owned a company called Palladium. And Palladium owned the rights to the Lone Ranger, Lassie, Sergeant Preston of the Yukon, and 50 TV movies. And Aunt Mary was one of them. So I was really excited to see that, but nobody really had heard of it. It's a story that functions on a lot of levels. It's a Baltimore story, as I said. It's a feminist story, because you have a woman as the protagonist, as the heroine, the woman who is really leading the charge. And don't forget, the movie is set in the 50s. It's not set in the 70s. The movie is set in it. So imagine discrimination that she might have had in the 70s, multiply that by 50, and that's what she faced in the 50s and 40s. It's amazing to me that a woman can, or a man can, learn English just by watching television and listening to the radio. There's something romantic about having somebody learn it through baseball. That's not the first story I've heard about an immigrant learning English through radio broadcasts. When I was doing the Dodgers book, I saw this kind of story all the time, and people would tell me stories about their grandparents who didn't speak English, but they would listen with them to Vin Scully on the radio and say he sounds very smart. They didn't know what he was saying, but he sounded very authoritative. The themes that also emerge in terms of baseball in the late 70s as depicted in popular culture, the Bad News Bears is probably the biggest, most famous example. And it's just about that time. The first movie is 76, the second movie is 77, third movie is 78. These kids on the Aunt Mary TV movie are nothing like the kids in those movies. Those kids were a little more realistic, but these kids in the TV movie are a little more, polite and respectful and so forth. What's telling at the end of the movie, and this might be a reflection of the time that it was that it aired. I don't know that this actually happened in the 50s, but Aunt Mary wants a girl to join the team. And there's some resistance from the boys. I don't know if that happened in the 50s. I know for a fact it happened in the 70s because it happened on my Little League team. The coach's daughter played. And I think she might have been the first or one of the first, because this is back to 74, I believe. I have to research that. I talked about Jean Stapleton before. I just want to talk about her a little bit more. When you have when you're coming off a successful TV show like All in the Family, and you're going to the network that you were a part of for so many years, and you were a cornerstone of that primetime lineup, you could pretty much have your pick of what to do. And for her to take this role, I think was such a brave choice as an actress, because A, she's the star, B, it's a real person. So you're going to be judged, at least in Baltimore, on that. Now, fortunately, Mary Dobkin was involved. She loved the publicity. She wanted the publicity for her kids. She didn't have any kids of her own, but she wanted it for the kids who were playing on her teams. And it's a brave choice for an actress. It's a real person. And also, it's a Hallmark Hall of Fame presentation. So there's going to be a different kind of a quality to it. If you've watched Hallmark Hall of Fame TV movies, they were always a cut above the regular TV movies. There was just something about them. So there's a lot of expectation when you take on that label. You have to live up to that. It's a 5-star event. Now you have a lot of cable shows, cable TV movies, cable up the game because they didn't have to answer to sponsors. Hallmark Hall of Fame was a little different, and CBS aired them for so many years in such a quality output. The last thing I want to do is give a plug for the Baltimore Public Library. I don't know if all of you are down in Baltimore. Excuse me, I'm so thirsty tonight. But they've been tremendously helpful in getting information about Mary, which is not really readily available. It's not that easy to find stuff on her, but you can see footage of her. I took a gamble. I found that she threw out the first pitch, I believe it was to Doug DeCinces, before Game 6 of the '79 World Series between the Pirates and the Orioles. And she did it from the first row. She did not go out to the mound or anything. First row, and tossed it. And that was a great moment. That was a great moment because everyone in that stadium who was from Baltimore knew who Mary Dobkin was. But now she got a chance to be on a national stage. And the TV movie comes out a couple of months after that. In those days, the network for the World Series was ABC, but CBS aired the TV movie. So I am delighted to take any questions that anyone has, or listen to any comments. Bruce Brown is saying the Pratt Library was the internet before 1995. To a large degree, it still is, because not everything's on the internet. I just completed the final edits on Do You Believe in Magic? And that's about the year 1966. The Baltimore News American is not on the internet. It's not on newspapers.com. It's not on ProQuest. It's not on Newspaper Archive. So the librarians there were very gracious in giving me access to the News American, so I could track how they reported the World Series. The Baltimore Sun is available on some of those databases, newspapers and ProQuest. Yes, Karen.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm almost done with the movie.
Oh, okay.
The minute I saw that you were doing that, I knew that person.
Right. It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. So check it out.
It's also on Prime Video.
Right.
I thought it was interesting with her. She doesn't really come across as she's not mean.
No.
She deals with those kids in a way I've never seen. I thought it was interesting that she said, I've had 105 operations.
Right.
I mean, nothing
She was a
gets,
sick woman. She was
yeah,
a sick woman.
yeah, nothing ever gets to her.
I mean, I summarized it by, by just saying the amputation was the biggest part that I, researched, but she was in and out of hospitals, and they referenced that in the TV movie where she
Yeah.
talked to one of the kids about how the nurses would help her.
Yes, that she, almost to the end of, I forget which part she said, I had my home in the hospital.
Right.
So I just thought it was kind of neat the way you're bringing this up now, that you have somebody is handicapped, but doesn't let it get to her or to
Oh,
the
I
kid.
think there should be a statue of her at Camden Yards. I don't
I
know
do
where they should put, where they could put it, but there should be a statue of her.
I know. But yeah, thanks for bringing this up
Yeah.
because this is she's a tough person.
David,
Yes, sir.
I might have gotten here a little late,
Yeah.
but I'm ignorant of Mary. And one of the things I'd like to know is a little bit of a background. Where were these teams? Where in Baltimore was she operating? Some of that information.
That's what I'm researching now through the library and trying to track
Okay.
down any descendants, but it certainly was within the city limits. She was not in the outskirts. She wasn't in Reisterstown or Pikesville or anything like that. She was definitely in the city, and it's such a story of bravery. It's a story of steadfastness and commitment. And I think, to Karen's point, one reason that the kids responded to her is because she knew her stuff. And I just watched a pilot of another show that's on CBS. It just aired, East New York, where a female police inspector comes to take over a precinct in Brooklyn, and everyone's kind of skeptical of her. And then one officer who was skeptical says, I'm sorry, I think it was the deputy mayor, was skeptical. And then he meets her. He says, oh, I did some research on you. And he starts to list her accomplishments. She didn't list them. He listed them. She knows who she is. She knows that she knows what she's doing. And it's a very similar story device in that someone's going to be skeptical, but once you prove that you are capable, that's what they respect.
Is there some of the players that played under Mary, have you ever been able to get some information?
Yeah, I did talk to one, and I don't know if this is true, but I've seen it online. I have to verify it. Ron Swoboda may have been one of the kids in her teams, on her teams.
Yeah, and he later came back to make that catch against the Orioles.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, we have two Karens. Karen Holler and Karen Brown.
Well, now that I know it's on Prime, I'm gonna try to look at it sometime in the very near future myself. So that's that's good to know. Also, David, I know you're doing research on this now. I'm also plug your upcoming book, which I think is going to be released in March.
Yes.
You Believe in Magic. I had the pleasure of getting an advanced PDF from the publisher.
Thank you.
To read and to make comments on it. I was very impressed. Obviously, I wasn't alive in '66. My parents hadn't even met yet. Actually, they did in November. Anyway, but yeah, I'm look forward to when it actually is comes out, and obviously the Orioles and all that stuff, but the meshing of stories from across the country and the political landscape was very interesting. So
thank you.
we'll have you back in the spring when that comes out, and so people can be ready, because
Absolutely.
it's and honestly, the 2022 The Orioles surprised a lot of people. They did split the last two games today, the doubleheader. I was at the part of the second game, but nobody saw them winning 83 games this year, and probably gonna possibly bring home Manager of the Year and those kind of awards. So it could be the start of a new era here in Baltimore in terms of consistency.
Yeah.
And so much appreciated. Obviously, thank you tonight, and I know you just finished your holy day, so thank you for taking the time. I'm sure you're hungry. But anybody else have questions for David? Like I mentioned before, the Ruth is finishing up the Baltimore Chop, so it should be hopefully distributed electronically soon. And Bruce and I and the rest of the board will have a meeting in a little less than a month, talk about strategies and stuff for next year. Obviously, we don't have another convention, so we'll be relegated to the ash heap of history, as Ronald Reagan used to say, in that regard. But as far as I know, and I think you can certify this officially, we are the biggest chapter in SABR. We're even bigger than New York City and Bob David's overall, not primary members necessarily, but we have 560 plus
Wow.
on our roster. So that's pretty darn impressive for guys who have only been around. Whenever we were
Peter.
founded, 2015. So
Peter, I have a question from you. I was at the Baby Ruth Museum today with my two granddaughters, and one of them really doesn't have that interest in baseball. The other does, but they were interested in more of the personal stuff about Babe Ruth. And the big question they asked me: why did Babe get married at 6 o'clock in the morning to his second wife?
to avoid the press.
To avoid the press. Okay.
But of course, there was advance notice. Obviously, the church he got married in, the priests and the altar boys knew. So word got out. There was a flock of children that came to see there because the altar boys spread the word that he was going to be there. So there wasn't a lot of press coverage, but there were a lot of little ones there to to peep in on the ceremony.
Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously that was 1929. So clearly he was, one of the biggest names on earth. So yeah,
They were very interested in the dress she wore because that's on exhibit there.
Right. Yeah, we only got that a couple. I want to say maybe 2017, 16, 17, somewhere in that. Julia was still alive. Obviously that was her mother's dress. But we got that from the family.
Okay.
So yeah, for being almost 100 years old, it looks like it's in pretty decent shape.
Yeah, it's very good shape.
So but yeah, I think that's where we stand right now in terms of chapter news. Obviously it's as of whenever the final games end, be officially in the postseason. Judge did the number 62 and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm honestly, with the Orioles not making it, I'm going to look to Cleveland this year. I want to see if they changing their name breaks their curse. And
I'm rooting for Cleveland.
Yeah, Cleveland, and I'm a softie for Buck Showalter. So if the Mets, makes a nice run, that'd be nice. I'm not a Philadelphia fan, but they're going to crap out in the first round against the Cardinals anyway.
I just had a question.
Mhm.
As far as the movies and the woman, how did you see the men responding to her?
Are you talking to me?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
The men in the movie or the men in real
Well, the
life?
men in the movie kept saying, I don't know why you bother with these kids.
Well, I think Martin Balsam was really the antagonist, for lack of a better word. He was kind of a composite, and I have no way of verifying this, but it was very unusual that he was the grandfather and the kid's parents were deceased. They didn't really go into that, but that must have been based on somebody in real life. And my guess is that Balsam was just a composite of a lot of foils for Mary, or don't do that. So you always need someone to play against. And it wasn't in a mean way. It
No,
wasn't in a
it's
mean way at all.
very negative.
Negative. Say, well, it's 1954. What do you want to do? Don't forget that that's also when Lucy was trying to get in Ricky's show every week at the Tropicana. And Ricky kept saying, Lucy, you're not going in my show. So the time was totally different. This was absolutely a different time, almost a different planet. When you look at what was going on, 54 is when Brown versus Board of Ed was decided. Rock and roll was only had hints of it on the air, on the radio. So it didn't really break out till Bill Haley and the Comets did Rock Around the Clock in 55. So the country was very much saccharine. It was in just a very peace and prosperity phase. Don't rock the boat. And here comes this handicapped woman who has so much spit and vinegar and just wants to embrace the sport that she loves and convey that to the kids. And the kids are in need of it. They're in need of a leader who can share that passion and teach them about the game. And I think the movie ends on a hopeful note where there's I'm not really a spoiler alert, but it's kind of a pullback shot where she's leading the team off the field. And she's saying, hey, we're going to practice tomorrow. Doesn't matter if you win or lose today. We're still going to practice tomorrow. We're going to practice. We're going to work on the fundamentals. And I want you there at whatever time she says in the movie. And it's an affirmation that life will go on, that for these kids, that it wasn't just a one and done season, right? It wasn't just, okay, she did it, she proved her point, and now she can go off into the sunset. No, she wants to keep doing this. So there was a deep commitment on her part. And Jean Stapleton verifies this in the interview.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Bruce? No? You're muted, Bruce.
You're muted.
I have to leave. Actually, I have an 8 o'clock and it's not here.
So,
So
all right.
sorry about that.
It was good for the beginning of October to get, have David get in, and
I appreciate it.
it's much appreciated. And, I'm glad again. Well, thank you I got your thank you note in the mail about 2 days ago. So, and of course, meeting you and at SABR 50 was very enjoyable. I just didn't get enough time to end with everybody.
Well, that's the thing about SABR and even the Cooperstown Symposium. I know John knows this. You just can't do everything. You're not going to be able to meet everyone that you want to meet. You won't be able to go to every session you want to go to. It's you just have to do the best you can. And I tried to meet as many people as I could, but it goes so fast.
It does.
And they pack it. We had Scott Bush as our guest at the Elysian Fields chapter a couple of weeks ago, and we just all talked about how packed those sessions were and how they just went boom, 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 boom all across the board. And there was never a dull moment. There was never a dull moment. And if you didn't want to go to a session, there were always people to talk to outside the rooms.
Absolutely. And what,
David, you got a bunch of Orioles fans here. I'm not sure if any of you saw David's presentation at SABR 50 on Mo Drabowski.
now?
It was 8 o'clock in the morning, so that was probably. David, you just want to do a 2-minute synopsis of that presentation, because that's also a great human interest story.
Oh,
And Drabowski's great pitching that.
yeah,
Well,
I'll talk about that more when Peter has me back in the spring when the book is
Okay.
published. But just
Yeah.
in short, and John, thank you for moderating. Drabowski was a journeyman pitcher who came to the Orioles in the offseason, and McNally got knocked around pretty early in game 1 Drabowski had changed from being a starter to a relief pitcher. And it's not clear to me whether the coaches did that or he wanted to do that, but in any event, that's his position at that point. And Hank Bauer calls him in from the bullpen, and Drabowski sets a relief pitching record in the World Series, strikes out 11. I forgot to say it was a relief pitching record. It was in the presentation, right. You listen to it, I said pitching record. It was a relief pitching record to strike out 11. He just had his stuff. Now, if you talk to Dodgers fans, they'll say, well, my guys were tired. And I referenced that the Dodgers took the entire season to win the pennant. It was a three-way race between LA, Pittsburgh, and San Francisco. It really did go down to the wire. And the Orioles had a couple of weeks to not worry about it. They had clinched on the 22nd of September, so they were safe. That burden was lifted. Even so, to strike out 11, especially the vaunted Dodgers, who are so wonderful, it's such a stellar roster. It's one of the great moments in World Series history.
I was at your presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you, Bruce.
The audio is up, I believe, on the SABR site.
Yeah. For 8 o'clock, it was pretty well attended.
Well, don't forget, I think all the people who came to SABR 50 were the diehard of the diehards. And
right.
After a 3-year gap, really came to as many as they could.
Right.
As you know, the problem is A and B are both going on, and they're both people I know, and they're both great topics. Which one do I choose?
Well, one of the things that I referenced, and I might have referenced it to John, was that they put me and another 1966 speaker on at the same time, which I thought was very odd. But then right before my session, somebody told me that that person's session was canceled.
Yes.
So he's passing my understanding. I don't.
Yeah,
really
it was Sam Zigner was
okay.
Doing Orioles minor league affiliation, the Miami Marlins.
Right.
And he didn't come because of COVID.
Oh, I see. Okay. But it was great fun to see everybody and to break out of the virtual format. I asked Scott if he thought there might have been more. And we all kind of concluded you might have had 50, maybe even 100 more if it weren't for the economy and COVID. Because COVID had reared its head again early in the year. And that might have scared some people off.
Well, I'm in touch with about 2,000 members every day through Horseside Trivia, and I can tell you there have been a lot more than 50 or 100 more.
Yeah.
I asked everybody, "Are you coming? Are you coming? Are you coming?" And they said no because of COVID. So it's not the money; it's COVID.
Because Baltimore is cheaper than New York or Philadelphia.
Right. And these people said it's not. I'm not afraid of catching COVID. I already have COVID, and I don't want to spread it. I don't want to be COVID Mary.
Well, we'll take after a 3-year gap and a worldwide pandemic, have 500 plus in a mid-sized city.
Still extraordinary.
Yeah. So
yeah.
And the feedback from everything I've heard was people really loved it. That it was one of their top, for those who've gone to several over decades. That it was one of their top.
And the swag is the best quality I've ever seen.
A lot of people have said that.
I told Scott that first thing I said. I said these are the best shirts that I've seen at a SABR event.
Yeah, I'm not wearing it now, but I wear my SABR 50 hat quite often. So,
I mean, it's close to the ballpark. We had a great game. It was very, it was real easy. The hotel was really nice. Good proximity to the harbor, real easy to get to. If you're on the East Coast, you just hop on a train and a few hours later you're there. And we were blessed with great weather.
I just want to say I had a hand in the design of those shirts, by the way.
Oh, congrats. Thank you. Thank you.
So, how many times we had to change the logo from 2020 and scratch it out and start over again. But it came, it happened. We did pretty well. So, especially for those of us who are local, who put more time into it.
Right.
I think we did,
Well, the other thing is, I don't recall a SABR conference having this many excursions. You had the Babe Ruth birthplace tour, and you had the old ballparks tour at the same time. So there was a lot of things. Yeah, there was a lot to do, and that's the sign of good planning, because you don't want people left to their own devices. You want to give them the choices that you've organized. And if they want to go above and beyond, that's fine. But to give them all of these choices that you've planned out, I thought was just the icing on the cake.
Well, that's a nice compliment, but in fairness, we have a fantastic city for baseball.
True.
You can do the same thing in San Antonio or even Kansas City
Right.
or Denver. You know, we have a lot to offer, and there's a whole bunch of stuff we didn't get to because of that.
But somebody has to plan it. Somebody has to,
Good point.
you know,
Yeah.
somebody has to say, hey, you know what, we'll do this day, this on this day, this on that day, and we'll give people the option. It's all about giving people the options.
well,
Was
we're
that-
also blessed with our board that we have. You know,
Yeah.
Bruce does trivia. Dave Stinson and Bernard McKenna are ballpark experts. You know, I have the museum connection. John is a researcher, and he did a presentation at the convention. I mean, these are all people who sit on our local board.
Right.
And we just had, it's a confluence of experts, basically.
Yeah, and we all did presentations plus helped around, you know, with bags and hats and stuff too. So.
Yeah, and we had so many people step up with volunteers and this and that, and it clicked. And I'll have to give Phoenix a nudge too, because Bush had only done one convention. Jacob was the veteran here, but Scott Carter and Jessica had never been to one before.
Yeah.
And it seemed to, for the most part, flow pretty seamlessly.
It was the most seamless I've ever seen. Registration was quite simple. It was also near the ballrooms, which I don't think I've ever seen before.
No, usually being a different floor or somewhere else. Yeah.
That made it easier too. Because if you needed a question answered, you didn't have to go hunt for the person to give you the answer. They were right there. There was always a SABR rep right outside those doors. And that helps to no end.
All right, folks, I gotta cut out.
All right, Bruce. See you soon, buddy. Yeah, I have to write my president's message for the shop tomorrow, and so obviously I'm gonna reference the good feedback we got at SABR 50,
Yeah.
and you know, hopefully it won't be another 40 years before Baltimore gets it again. So, because most of us aren't going to be here. Well, yeah.
Chicago is next year, and that's only 9 months away. So,
yes, and another thing is Baltimore's 50 was also the latest it's ever been. You know,
right.
Mid-August. It's always usually in June or July. So that
might have been another factor because people are taking their kids to school or
using the last minutes of
Exactly.
vacation. You know, I understand, and you know, it had been bumped so many times, obviously, and people were probably like fed up. But you know, I would have loved 800-900 people, but I'll take 5. So we should be, you know, for those of us who put the work in and on the committees and you know that kind of stuff over the past couple of years. You know, we should be pretty proud. You know, Baltimore never held in the city. The last time they had it was up in Taos. So,
Right.
So for the first time doing it in the city downtown with everything, with COVID, with crime, with restaurants shutting down, you know, pretty thumbs up across the board from what I heard. So
yeah.
Well, I got to go downstairs and feed them some cats. So if nothing else, I guess we have the called shot lunch for those who come in person, the 3rd Wednesday, and then we'll have the our Babel of October right before Halloween, that last Sunday, which I think is either the 29th or 30th. So we can talk about the postseason and stuff then, and the new implementation of baseball rules and stuff will go into effect in the off season. And I personally will not miss the shift.
I'll agree to disagree.
Okay. Well, I would just love to, if
Another
Musial and
conversation
Williams
another
were here to be able to say, yeah, you should have done it against us. Well, we would have batted 650. But anybody else? Questions, comments? Good to go. So enjoy the beginning of the postseason wild card round. David, are you Mets or Yankees?
Mets.
Okay. Yeah, I have. I'm married to a Philly girl, but I definitely will go for the Mets.
It's been quite a season. To get 100 wins is an amazing accomplishment and hopefully an indicator of things to come. I do not understand why people are disappointed on Twitter. I really don't.
Well, I'm happy for them. I think it's only the third or fourth time they've won 100 games.
Yeah.
So, and we'll see what happens. I mean, this is the new setup with this all three games at the higher seed and all that stuff. So,
David,
Yes.
to illustrate the new regime in Flushing,
Mhm.
you had an old timers day,
Yeah.
and it was great. I did a bio of Craig Anderson, who's an original Met, and he got invited up with his wife, all expenses paid,
Yeah.
hotels paid, and he came across the field. He was escorted by Gil Hodges' daughters. And
Yeah.
he sent me a little blurb, and he just was so excited about what had happened. And the Mets finally are recognizing the old Mets.
It happened also with Keith Hernandez Day. They all remarked in the booth how first class the day was, and they did it again on Old Timers Day, that everything was first class in how they treated the people, how they planned it, how they honored them. It was all planned. It's all in the planning. And Steve Cohen's the right guy for the right time. And I could not believe that Old Timers Day hadn't occurred in almost 30 years.
Yeah.
I really couldn't believe that. So what he did is really bring back the nostalgia of the Mets. And I thank God, because it needed a boost. And this was a fantastic year.
I agree. Well, good luck to you. Obviously,
Thank you.
I know John's team's out, but I like to see some new faces and stuff get a chance in 2022 for a change. My Orioles are out and my Cubs are out, so I'll go with the new kids on the block. So
Indians and the Mets. I'm with you, Peter.
yeah, Mets Cleveland I think would be nice. So tired of the big mark guys, but well, tomorrow a whole bunch of managers might get fired, so be on the lookout for that. And if nothing else, I'll see you guys soon. You know how to reach me if you need anything, and we'll be in touch.
Take care.
Thank you,
All
David.
right, guys, have a good night.
Be well,
Take care.
everyone.